Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello learners, welcome to the course of Microeconomics and its applications. And it is wonderful that we have come to the second unit of this course. And today is the first lecture of Unit 2. I am the course coordinator as well as the presenter, Dr. Aparna Samudra, and I am associated with Rashtrasant Tukroji Maharaj, Nagpur University. Today, as we are starting our next unit, let us see that what are the learning objectives of today's lecture. We are basically starting with the consumer behavior. In order to understand consumer behavior, there are two theories or two schools of thoughts which talk about that how can we analyze or study consumer behavior. One is called as a cardinal approach, other is called as an ordinal approach. So we will be differentiating today between both the approaches, cardinal and ordinal. Thereafter, we will understand the concept of utility, and then we will understand the law of diminishing marginal utility. So that's the sequence of the lecture today. The question which I pose to you before we start our lecture is that how do we choose? For example, you have 100 rupees in your pocket. You go to the market to buy something. You go to a supermarket. The shelves are full of various brands of products. Or even with what you want to buy, the full number of brands are available. Or you go to a vegetable and fruit market. You see huge variety of fruits and vegetables are available. So the question which comes to our minds is that how does a rational consumer choose that where and how much and what to spend their money on? What should I buy? How much should I buy? Is the most important question which comes to the mind if we think about an economist's point of view, or even from the point of view of business, as to how people are making choices between various types of goods so that they maximize their satisfaction, because we are talking about consumers being rational. This question of how people or consumers are making choices or how they are choosing what to spend their money on is answered by these two approaches of consumer behavior. As I just told you, one approach is called as cardinal utility approach, other is called as ordinal utility approach. Cardinal utility approach was propounded by Marshall. Therefore, it is also known as marshalling approach. Whereas ordinal utility approach was propounded mainly by Hicks, and it is known as indifference curve analysis. What is the basic difference between these two approaches, cardinal and ordinal? Cardinal utility approach assumes that utility can be expressed in numbers. That is, whatever a consumer is buying or whatever he is consuming and his utility, he can quantify in numbers whatever utility he gets by consumption of something. Of course, in this course of lecture, we will be defining what do you mean by utility. But cardinal approach is saying that utility can be expressed in numbers. On the other hand, the ordinal utility approach says that utility cannot be quantified in numbers. It can be, however, ranked by the consumers. The orders can be given by the consumer. That is, I like this bundle more than that bundle. So that preferences can be given between various bundles of goods or between various commodities. So the broad difference between cardinal and ordinal here, learners, is that cardinal approach is assuming that any consumer is able to quantify whatever satisfaction he derives by consumption of a good or a service. That is, you can say that if I get a glass of water and I consume a glass of water, the satisfaction which I am getting by consumption of that one glass of water, I can put it in numbers. It can be expressed in numbers. Whereas ordinal utility approach says it is not easy to quantify your satisfaction. Whereas if I ask a consumer, do you like one more than two or two more than one, he may be able to answer it, or he may be able to rank it, or he may be able to order his preferences. So both these approaches are talking about the consumer behavior. They are deriving the consumer equilibrium, but the basic way, the basic, the methodology is different in terms of that. Cardinal says that you can express your utility in numbers, whereas ordinal says that the utility can only be ranked. When we talk about cardinal utility approach, we will be talking about the law of diminishing marginal utility and law of equi-marginal utility. Whereas when we talk about ordinal utility approach, we will be talking about the indifference curve analysis. So both approaches we are going to do, but today's lecture we are mainly focusing on the cardinal utility approach. Okay, so let's move forward and understand the concept of utility. Because broadly, both the concepts are talking about that how much utility the consumer is getting. So what is this utility? Now, utility is many times said to be, for example, if I ask you, what do you mean by utility? Utility is taken to be synonymous with pleasure, with satisfaction, or a sense of fulfillment of desire. That I say that if I get a glass of water, it is very satisfying for me. Or it was a pleasure eating this dish. It was a pleasure buying this car. Or it was a pleasure consuming something. So, or maybe a service also gives you some pleasure. So, pleasure or satisfaction or sense of fulfillment of desire. That is, for example, I said I need this thing, and when that desire or that need gets fulfilled, I get a sense of fulfillment. I feel happy about it. I feel satisfied. That is why we say that utility is synonymous with pleasure, with satisfaction, or a sense of fulfillment of desire. Or in other words, we can say that utility means it's a want satisfying power of a commodity. That is, when you are consuming a commodity, it satisfies your wants. So that power of your want satisfaction may also be called as utility. Then utility can also be, say, it can be a value or satisfaction from consumption. That is, utility is giving you certain value from consumption or certain satisfaction from consumption. So broadly we are zeroing on this term satisfaction. That is, utility means that you are getting satisfaction from consumption. However, we say utility is a very psychological phenomenon. A same good may give you more satisfaction at one point of time. In another time period, it may not give you a same satisfaction, because psychologically we may be in a different situation. So it's a very psychological phenomena, and it's also a very relative phenomena. So when we talk about in objective terms, if we want to formally define utility, we say utility is the amount of satisfaction derived from a commodity or service at a particular time. That is, in a given period of time, at particular point of time, the satisfaction which a consumer is getting by consumption of a commodity or service is called as utility. See, this particular time is very important, because maybe during a summer, a cold drink will give you a greater satisfaction. The same bottle of cold drink may not give you a similar level of utility during winters. Therefore, we are saying it's a very psychological phenomenon, and therefore it is very closely related to the time period under which this consumption is being done. Now let us discuss the features of utility one by one. As we just said, utility is subjective. Subjective means it is dealing with the mental satisfaction of a man. Maybe consuming cold drink gives me a greater satisfaction than you consuming a cold drink, because we have choices are different. So both of us are offered a similar brand of cold drink at a similar temperature during the same period of time, but our utility or the satisfaction which we drew from consumption of that cold drink was different. So it's a very subjective thing. And for example, liquor, let us take another example. Liquor may be having utility for a drunkard, but for a teetotaler who does not drink at all, it has no utility. So it's subjective. Second, utility is also relative. That is, the utility of commodity will never remain the same. As we just took the example that cold drink in summer month may give you a different satisfaction. Cold drink during rainy season, the same cold drink during rainy season will give you a different satisfaction. Same cold drink during winter season will give you a different satisfaction. So utility is relative. Therefore, it varies with time, with place, and with person. For example, cooler, which we use during summer, gives you a greater utility. It has a more utility in summer but not during the winter. It also varies with place. For example, the same cold drink we are having along with your friends in your college canteen will give you a greater satisfaction rather than having a cold drink sitting alone in some unknown place. So that changes the utility. So utility is relative. Then utility is not essentially useful. Utility does not mean we are talking about the usefulness of the product. Utility, we are saying, is we are talking about the satisfaction which you are deriving. So a commodity having utility need not be useful. For example, liquor is not useful, but it satisfies the want of an addict. Therefore, it has some utility to him. Okay, then utility is ethically neutral. You can say that this utility is bad, this utility is good. So ethics has nothing to do with utility. For example, you may say liquor may not be good from a moral point of view, but for drunkards, people who are addicted to it, it satisfies their wants. So it creates utility for them. So these are very specific features of utility which you need to keep in mind. Now there are various concepts of utility which we will now understand. One is called as initial utility. Then we have total utility, and then we have what is called as marginal utility. Now total and marginal. Learners, let us go back to the last lecture of Unit 1 which we did, where we had discussed about total and marginal functions. So that concept which we did in the previous lecture of Unit 1, the last lecture of Unit 1, that concept we are going to use today when we are understanding the concept of utility. Let us understand all three concepts very clearly. What is initial utility? Initial utility is derived from the consumption of the first unit of a commodity. When you're consuming that particular commodity or service for the first unit, let us say you are eating biscuits. So the first unit of biscuit which you ate gave you some satisfaction or utility. That is called as our initial utility. Then you have total utility. Total utility is the aggregate of the utilities obtained by consumption of different units of the same commodity. The first biscuit, second biscuit, third biscuit, fourth biscuit, each biscuit is giving you some utility. When you add up the utility of all the biscuits which you had eaten, together it will be called as total utility. What is total utility? It is the sum total of all the utilities which you got by consumption of various units of that particular commodity. So if you are consuming n units, we will say the total utility of n units is equal to u1 plus u2 plus u3 plus u4 and so on till un. So it is the aggregate of utilities obtained from consumption of different units of the commodity. Then we have marginal utility. Coming back to the concept of marginal. That is, we are talking about change in the total because we have consumed one extra unit. So change in the total utility which resulting from the change in consumption. That is, when you are consuming, let us say, 1 unit of the product, you get some utility. You take second unit of the same product, you get again some utility. So 2 units of the product will give you some utility. 1 unit of the product has given you some utility. So that extra unit which you consumed, how much change did it bring in your utility is measured by marginal utility. So the change in total utility resulting from the change in consumption is called as marginal utility. So if we want to calculate marginal utility of the nth unit, we say it is equal to total unit of the nth unit minus total utility of the n minus 1 means the previous unit. If we want to calculate the total unit of the marginal utility of the third unit, we will say it is equal to total utility of 3 units minus the total utility of 2 units. That is 3 minus 1 is 2. This will give us the marginal utility. Now there are various types of marginal utility. It can be positive, it can be zero, or it can be negative. As the name is indicating, positive marginal utility means that with the consumption of an additional unit, your total utility has increased. Okay, for let us say for the total utility for 3 units was 5, total utility for 2 units was 2. There is an increase from 2 to 5. How much is it increase? 3 units. That is your positive marginal utility. Zero marginal utility means that extra consumption of that unit did not change your total utility. 3 units gave you total utility of 5. 4 units also give you total utility of 5. There is no change your utility because you're consuming the 4th unit. Then we will say that your marginal utility is 0. Then you also have a negative marginal utility. Means with consumption of an additional unit of commodity, your total utility has decreased. It has decreased. For total utility of 4 units was 5. Total utility of 5 units is 3. Means your total utility has declined. Meaning to say that your marginal utility is 3 minus 5 means minus 2. It is negative. And it of course is possible that your marginal utility is negative. We will see subsequently in this lecture. Before moving further, let us do this small quiz with respect to total utility and marginal utility. I am saying assuming marginal utility for the first 3 units of a good are 200, 150 and 125 respectively. That 3 units 1, 2, 3 are being consumed. The marginal utility of the first is 200, marginal utility of the second is 150, marginal utility of the third is 125. I am asking you that what is the total utility when 2 units are getting consumed? Please read the question once more. Marginal utility of 3 units is 3 units of a good consumed is given to you. First unit 200, second unit 150, third unit 125. We are asking you that what is the total utility of 2 units? What will be the answer? What do you think will be the answer? Give it a thought. The answer will be 350. Why? Because the first unit gave you 200 marginal utility. Second unit gave you 150. So marginal utility of 1 plus marginal utility of 2 will give you total utility. Answer will be 350. Another question. This is given to you. Joe's marginal utility from consuming the 4th slice of pizza will be how much? Number of 6 slices of pizzas are given. For each pizza, total utility is given. That is, if you have 1 slice of pizza, your total utility is 100. 2 183, 244, 250, 5 slices, 300, 6, 310. Utils is the number in the unit in which we are measuring your utility. Okay, so we are asking you what will be the Joe's marginal utility if when he is consuming the fourth slice of pizza. What will be the answer? How much is the total utility at 4? 280. How much was the total utility when he was consuming 4 minus 1, that is the previous number of slices, 3 slices? 240. Is there a change in total utility when we move from 3 slices to 4 slices? Yes. Total utility increased from 240 to 280. So what will be your marginal utility? Marginal utility will be 280 minus 240, that is 40 utils. So this is positive marginal utility, that is by consumption of one extra slice of pizza, my total utility increased from 240 to 280. What was the change in your utility? Total utility? 280 minus 240, that is 40 utils. So this is how we calculate your marginal utility. Now let us understand that how cardinal utility analysis, what does it say? What is law of diminishing marginal utility? But before that, let us see the assumptions behind this analysis. The first assumption we are saying is utility is measurable and quantifiable entity. That is, you can measure. For example, in the previous example, we saw that by each slice of pizza, what was the total utility Joe was getting. Okay, so this is a particular school of thought given by Marshall says that utility can be measured. And how will we measure utility? He says money is the measuring rod of utility. That is, the amount of money which a person is prepared to pay for a unit of good means that this is the utility he is going to derive from consumption of that product. Okay, so he says that money utility is measurable and you can quantify it by money that he is willing to spend. So that's the most important assumption. Second, we say because we are talking about money as the measuring rod for your utility, there is constancy of the marginal utility of money. That is the rod. The scale cannot change. If, for example, you're measuring your height by feet, 1 feet will always remain 1 feet. Whatever tape you take, whatever ruler or whatever scale you take, 1 feet will always be 12 inches. So, because you are measuring your utility by way of money, we are assuming that the marginal utility of money will be constant. That is, every extra unit of money will give you the same satisfaction or the measure will not change. So marginal utility of money will remain constant. But this is not a realistic assumption, of course, because as we get more and more money, your utility for it will not remain constant, it will also change. But we are assuming that there is a constancy of the marginal utility of money. Next assumption that we take is hypothesis of independent utility, which says that two goods are not complementary to each other. The theory, this particular theory of cardinal utility, is ignoring complementarity between goods, which means that the utility obtained from one good does not depend upon the quantity consumed of the other good. That is, if I am measuring utility obtained from, let us say, by having pizza, that will not get affected by me consuming cold drinks also along with pizza. So the utility derived from pizza will not be it's independent of utility which I am going to derive by consumption of cold drink. So that is called as hypothesis of independent utility. That is, for each good, the utility is independent of any other consumption's good. Now, let us go to the law of diminishing marginal utility. As the name indicates, it is saying that the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase in stock of thing diminishes with every increase in the stock that he already has. That is, every extra consumption, every extra unit that you are consuming is going to give you lesser satisfaction, because as and as you consume more, the extra utility or the extra satisfaction which you will get from it will keep on declining. So the additional benefit, which is measured by your marginal utility, which a person derives, which a person gets, how he gets? By increasing the stock of that thing, that is by taking more and more of that. So extra satisfaction which you get, the additional benefit which you get by having more and more of the same thing will keep on declining. For example, when you are very thirsty, the first glass of water will give you the maximum satisfaction. Second glass of water, if you consume, it will give you satisfaction, but less than the first glass of water. You consume another glass of water, the third glass of water may give you even lesser satisfaction than the second glass of water. Means as and as you are consuming, you're increasing the consumption of water, the extra satisfaction or the marginal utility which you got by consumption of this water glass is declining. Then Samuelson says that as the amount consumed of a good increases, the marginal utility of the good tends to decrease. That is, as and as you have more of something, your extra of that will give you lesser and lesser satisfaction. So that is called as the law of diminishing marginal utility. What do you mean by diminishing? Reducing, decreasing. So marginal utility is declining as and as you consume the same product more and more, its extra satisfaction will keep on declining. Now let us take this particular graph and table, and this will explain you this curve, this concept in a better way. We are taking Cassie's total utility and marginal utility. Now this is the quantity of clams Cassie has, so from 0 to 9. Each clam is giving certain utility to her. So 0 units of course means 0 utility. 1 extra clam, total utility is 15. Second, 2 more, 2 units 28, 3 units 39. So you see that your utility, total utility is changing as and as the quantity of clams is increasing. So we plot it on this graph. This is the first utility function of Cassie is given to you. We have taken total utility on the vertical axis, quantity of clams on the x-axis. What do you see? What is your observation, learners, with respect to this graph? Do you see some behavior? What do we see? We see that as and as you increase the quantity of clams, your total utility is increasing, increasing till the 8th unit. When you go to the 9th unit, your total utility has started falling. Similar situation you can see, this particular graph of course has been taken from this table. Let us have a look at this table. What is happening? When no quantity means no utility. 115 at 2 units 20, at 3 units 39. You see this is increasing. Once you come to the 8th unit, the total utility is 64. What is happening at the 9th unit? Total utility has declined to 63. Okay, what we have said, what did Marshall and Samuelson say? That as and as you have more and more stock of something, the every additional satisfaction or every additional utility will decline. Let us see from this table that how it is happening. From your total utility, we can derive marginal utility. How? Let us say you have 0 units, means zero utility. You consume the first unit. Initial utility is there of how many utils? 15. What is the extra utility you got by consumption of one extra unit? 15 minus 0, 15. That is, when I was not consuming anything, my total utility was 0. I consume one more unit. I consume 0 to 1 means one extra unit I am consuming. What has happened to total utility? It has grown, it has increased from 0 to 15. What is marginal utility? Change in the total utility because one more unit is being consumed. So what will be the answer? 15 minus 0, 15. Let us go to the marginal utility of the second. You are moving from 1 to 2. What is happening to total utility? It is increasing from 15 to 28. What is the change, my dear learners? What will be the marginal utility of second unit? It will be 28 minus the previous unit's utility, that was 15. So 28 minus 15 will give us 13. Similarly, we go find the marginal utility of third unit. What it will be? Total utility from the third unit, which is 39, minus total utility from the previous unit, that was 28. So 39 minus 28 will give you 11. So what is happening is that as and as you are having more, as and more Cassie is having more of quantity of clams, her marginal utility is declining. It is declining from positive 15, 13, 11, 9, 7, 5, 3, 1 and it has become negative also when you move from 8 to 9. And when your marginal utility is negative, your total utility now has declined. So your total utility function has started falling. So corresponding to the total utility function, we have a marginal utility function in the B panel of this graph. What is it showing? It is showing that your marginal utility is declining as you are consuming more of the same product. So this is called as marginal utility or the law of diminishing marginal utility. Now this law has certain limitations. First of all, the assumption that your utility can be measured is untenable. It is very difficult if I ask you how much satisfaction have you got by having one chapati today. It will be very difficult to quantify and measure it. Also, this happens because utility is a subjective concept. One chapati today will give you a different satisfaction as compared to me having the same chapati at the same point of time. So it's a subjective concept. Then marginal utility of money cannot be held constant. It cannot be said that every extra money that I am earning will give me the same level of satisfaction. It may give me a different level of satisfaction altogether because money satisfaction is also subject to change. Then the derivation is based on various assumptions holding things constant, that is time period is constant. So many things are constant. Independent hypothesis, we have taken that satisfaction from one type of product is not dependent on the satisfaction on the other type of product. So these are certain assumptions which are leading to the limitations of this law. So let us now summarize whatever we have done today in the lecture. One, we have said that whenever we want to analyze consumer behavior, the two schools of thoughts are cardinal and ordinal. Cardinal means you can measure the utility. Ordinal says you can just order the utility. What is utility? Utility can be defined as value or the satisfaction which one gets by consumption. Utility can be of many types. It can be initial, it can be total, it can be marginal. Thereafter, marginal can be positive, it can be zero, it may be negative. Then we talked about the law of diminishing marginal utility, which said that as and as you get more, consume more of the same product, what will happen is that the extra satisfaction which you are going to get will keep on declining. So today we will just wrap up now about the law of diminishing marginal utility. In the subsequent lectures, we will be talking about that what is equi-marginal utility, what will happen if more than one product is being consumed, and how do we derive the demand curve using this particular principle. Till then, happy learning.